I'm making this table from 2x12 construction lumber. If you want a real butcher block, I would recommend using birch or some other type of wood that you trust better as you would for a cutting board. I'm starting off by just cleaning all the edges, just trying to get square edges to make it easier to rip all the pieces down later. I then cut down smaller pieces out of the long board because it's way easier to push through the table saw. I took all my pieces over and cut out 2-inch strips. This can be whatever you want. 2-inch strips just seem like a good look, I guess. That's all I was really going for. Then I glued up all the boards. I'm gluing up in 2 sections here because I want to send both through the planer just to get them nice and smooth after, rather than spending a whole bunch of time with a belt sander. After smoothing them out, I just glue together the 2 halves, and it's much easier to clean up a single glue joint after this. I then square up the tabletop using a framing square and my track saw. If you don't have a track saw, you obviously can use anything else. You can use a circular saw and a straight edge. That works well. I'm then cutting out corners. Since this is for my dinette, the corners would just be in the way when sitting down, so just getting those out of the way. And then after that, I sand everything down, and once everything's sanded down to about 120 grit, I then follow up with a 1/4 inch round over on all the edges except the very back, since that's against the wall. Now this, I don't know, I don't think this is technically the right way to apply wipe on polyurethane, but this is what I do. Essentially the same thing people do for Rubio monocoat, and I don't know, it works, so maybe try it out on a practice piece. I then rip out my support pieces, because what I'm doing here is adding an angle support from the wall to help hold up the dinette, just because I don't want anything on the floor getting in the way. So the first thing I'm putting together here is a little bracket for the wall that an adjustable angle piece is going to fit into. So this is pretty simple, just 3 pieces with a little bit of space. Then I'm working on the actual angle support piece, just figuring out the right dimensions and everything. Obviously, if you make something like this for yourself, it's going to vary greatly depending on how big your table is and where it's at. And even though I'm using hinges, you don't even have to do that. So that's all up to you. Before assembly, I clean up all the edges with a round over. Even though this isn't seen, I just wanted to avoid any splinters that might happen with rough edges. I then attach the hinges to my 2 angled support pieces. Essentially, a hinge in the middle is going to be attached to the table, and there's one long stretcher going from the table towards the wall, and then a smaller piece, which I'm attaching now, fits into the slot of that bracket I just made earlier. I then cut out another wall hanging bracket. This one, a little different. It's not the angled support piece. It's not for that. It's for the tabletop, actually, attaching to that. This is what it sits on. But I just dadoed out some slots here because I have these metal angle brackets. I'm attaching them to the underside of the table, but making it flush on the back. So basically these will pop in and the whole table can rest on top of that wall bracket. If you're confused, don't worry, it'll make more sense when I install it. And of course, this could vary greatly depending on what you want to do, so you don't have to make something this complicated. So here I'm attaching the wall hanging bracket. This is the one that the table sits directly on. And then I have to attach the second bracket, the lower one. That's where the angle piece actually fits into. Then I'm attaching my angle support piece to the tabletop, just the hinge. Once this was assembled, I could now hang it on the wall, and you can see how it works. The bottom support just slides in, and then the table sits right in the slot on top. Unfortunately, mine ended up a little wobbly. I had the wrong measurements for the brace, so I fixed that later. But you can see underneath, it's nice and clear, and now I actually have a table in my camper.